I'm going to talk for a second why we don't mute and how we came to this conclusion. I'm not saying this is right, but this works well for the way we have things set up. This really only works if your whole entire band is on in-ears. If your band is still using floor wedges, this probably wouldn't work the way you'd want it to. Your mutes are still very valuable if you're using floor wedges. But when we moved our entire band over to in-ears a few years ago, we realized that mutes got us in more trouble than they did help in a lot of ways. To explain that just a little bit, we use, here are all our vocal channels. So let's say we do have 8 vocals on a Sunday, and they are up. Now they are in a DCA group over here. All vocals are over here. And if you've ever had this happen, you have your lead vocalist, and they're on stage. They're coming on stage maybe after the message is done to do the closing song, however your service is set up, and they go up and they go to sing, and they are muted. Maybe actually all the vocals are muted because you've put them in a mute group and it helps, and you can hit mute and all your vocals are muted. But now your vocals are on stage and they are singing, and you realize you cannot hear your vocals at all anymore. And your vocal DCA group is up and you realize they can't hear the vocals. So what do? You come over here and you pop off your vocals, you pop them back on, except you hit your mute group. You hit one mute group and all the vocals pop back on, and it is loud. It goes from no vocals to vocals suddenly explode into the room. And it becomes that thing that people remember. Service was great, but man, when the vocals came on, when they forgot to unmute the vocals, it just kind of like, it's disruptive. And we've all done it, or if you haven't done it, then you're perfect. I've done it, and it's not fun. So we don't use mute groups anymore. When the band is done singing, we come over here to our DCA group and we've gotten the habit of, you bring down your all band and all vocals, and that mutes the band. And now it's okay, the band, anyways, they have their own in-ear monitor mix going. They can still hear themselves in their ears, and they're no longer questioning, are they going to remember to unmute me? Because if you unmute them, if you forget to unmute them and they're singing, they can't hear themselves in their ears as well. This way you keep them unmuted all the time. If the band goes up on stage and they start singing, they can still hear themselves in their ears because everything is pre-fader and they have their levels set using their iPad. And this way, when they start singing, you realize, oh my gosh, I can't hear anything. The band has started playing. You can now fade in the band, which is it's a lot cleaner save if you've messed up than it is to just unmute everything and everything explodes on. And this works for all of our instrumentation. This works for our teaching pastor as well. We do have a setup. They're really good about remembering to mute their pack because they wear it all morning, and they are very self-conscious that their mic could always be on. So they'll either mute their pack or they will take their pack off. And so the teaching pastor stuff, they also stay unmuted all the time as well too. And this also too, if your teaching pastor or host or whoever is on stage and they start talking and you forget, if you have them muted and you forget that they're supposed to be talking, it's a lot better to have your fader down and this unmuted and you fade them in, as opposed to the fader is up and they're not talking and all of a sudden they're like, hey, and it becomes a whole thing. So we generally do not use mute groups. We will at the beginning and the end of a service or a church day when everyone is done and we're muting everything and people are unplugging or plugging in. We will sometimes use that. But during the service, we use our DCA groups. When the band is done with the opening worship set, we fade all the vocals down and all instrumentation down, and the band can walk off stage. And then when the band does come on, if we forget to bring this back up, if we forget to bring it back up, we really try not to forget it, it's just a matter of fading the band back in. But the band is still hearing themselves in the ear, so they can keep going. They're not just standing there waiting to be unmuted. It really helps those recovery times when you do mess up and forget. Also, what we'll do is the band will be on stage, and before they start playing, you can kind of have this down here just a little bit, and they start playing, and you can just kind of ride it in a little bit louder as well to bring it up to volume as opposed to it just living here the entire time. So when they start playing, if I know it's going to be a loud opener to a song, but I don't want to blow everyone out, if they're going from a talking part where it's quiet to a part where the band gets really energetic and high volume, you can kind of bring it in, we'll bring it into like here and the band starts playing, or even here and the band starts playing. As they start playing, you can then kind of fade them up to a regular volume as opposed to something being muted and unmuted where it explodes on from being completely off. Admittedly, this also can get you in a lot of trouble, but it gets us in less trouble doing it this way as opposed to you have a channel muted and you unmute it, and literally it makes people jump in their seats, and you'll scare the soul out of them sometimes, depending on how that works. Now, if you still want to use mute groups, the other trick to remember is that if it's muted and you remember, this takes another step. If you remember to really think about this, if someone's muted, bring your fader down, unmute them, and then fade them in. But if you have a lot of vocals and they're all muted, and it can be a little hard if they're already kind of singing. If they're already singing, you got to remember to bring all your vocals down. Oh, I missed one. And then unmute them, hit your mute group, not like this. Then unmute them, and then fade them in. And that doesn't work very well either. And we don't use our mutes on the DCA either, your DCA mutes. I know your DCA mutes won't mute the band's in-ears, but we don't use those either because, again, that still will make them sometimes, it's just easier. You freak out for a second, and you unmute them, and it just all comes on at once. If you use your faders, you can fade it in, and it might be a mistake, but it's not a mistake that people usually it doesn't stay in their memory. They usually forget it as soon as the band comes in, and their mind already moves on. Curious what you think. Let me know.